Okay, welcome. Thank you all for coming. So first, I know most of the faces in here, but I just want to get to know you guys a little bit better. So if we can start over here and tell me your name and your major.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Marie, and my major is in nutrition dietetics.
Nat, also nutrition and dietetics.
I'm Tatum, also nutrition.
I'm Jesus, and my major is food science.
Lily, food science. Laura, nutrition and dietetics.
Alejandra, nutrition and dietetics. Natasha, nutrition and dietetics.
Sammy, nutrition and dietetics.
Aiden, nutrition and dietetics.
All right, a lot of nutrition and dietetics. That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming out, and I hope you will find this presentation very fun and informative. So Food Safety 101, this is just going to be a basic on what we should know about food safety. So first slide is, why should we care about food safety? So these are statistics pulled up from the internet. So 76 million people get sick annually, and 5,000 die from food-borne illnesses. And of course, long-term health problems can definitely arise from that if it's not taken care of ahead of time or if it's bad enough, and it costs billions. Now, that is kind of an interesting thought. So why do you think it costs so much money when people get sick? Does anyone have any ideas?
Oftentimes they have to be hospitalized.
Missing work, so now they're making less. The jobs have to find ways to cover what they miss, right? So this can be a lot more than just getting sick. It can cost the hospitals a lot of money, it costs people a lot of money, a lot of manpower put into taking care of people. So, what are some of the rules for maintaining sanitation and food handling and storage? This is a large list. Now, mainly what we do is a lot of food handling. So I know a lot of us in here are involved in STFSA and FSA in the farmers market, and even just preparing things for our school, our work, anything. The main thing that I wanted to point out was books, handbags on the demo table. Now, I know when we're at farmers market, or even in the back, FSA, STFSA, we'll have our phone out, right? Put the phone on the table, not a big deal. Phones have so much germs on them, and backpacks, of course. We put our backpacks everywhere, on the floor, in locker rooms, everywhere. So that's a huge no-no. We have to make sure that when we're on the demo table, it's just food-related items, everything that's clean, nothing that we've added to it. And so why is food safety important to professionals, for the food scientists and the RDs? So first, we have relaying the food safety concerns to patients. Now, if we're trying to tell patients, to make meal plans. So if we want to tell them make meal plans and we're telling them, oh, you should cook this ahead of time, and of course we're all so busy, so we can't possibly come home every night and expect our patients to make meals. So we have to let them know, how long can you store the food? What temperature should you be cooking it at? And of course using a thermometer to cook the food, just to make sure internal temperatures. I'm sure most of us don't use a thermometer, but we should be using one. So very important. Now, conducting food demonstrations. This is something I'm sure as food scientists and RDs, we will be most likely doing in our career. So this is very important, and this is the main purpose of having this lecture today, was to talk about food demonstrations, because we've had a couple issues with them in the past, and we want to make sure we don't have any more issues in the future. And then lastly is the knowledge of different bacteria. So we have learned a lot about bacteria in our microbiology classes, in our chemistry classes, in all sorts of classes, and now we need to be able to kind of recognize which ones are going to grow in which environments and why they're harmful and what they can do. So that's mainly what this is for. So what populations are at high risk for foodborne illnesses? Does anyone know? Have any guesses? Who should we be watching out for? Laura?
The elderly.
The elderly. Yes?
Low income.
Say it again.
Low income.
Okay, sure. Anyone else? Yes?
Children.
Yes? What age do you think?
Probably the younger ages, 3 to 7.
Perfect. Saw a hand back there? Yes?
People with immunodeficiency.
Yes. So we're missing one. You knocked everything out of the park. One more. Yes? Bam. All right. Man, y'all are good. So these are our 4 biggest groups. So 5 and under. You were very close. You were right in the middle. And of course, we can all tell why these are very important groups that we should watch out for. So next, I kind of have a fun little game going. So fact or fiction. Once a hamburger hamburger turns brown in the middle, it's cooked. True or false? Who thinks true? No one. You think true?
I probably wouldn't.
Who's false? Everyone else. So what would be the correct way to know if a hamburger is cooked? Thermometer. Who does that at home? Sometimes? Okay, we have one sometimes. I'll take it. So of course, but if we're in a professional setting and we're cooking food for other people, we would have to use a thermometer. And just because it's brown in the middle does not mean it's done. Next one. You should not put hot food in the refrigerator. Who thinks this is true? Right? Who thinks it's false? Of course, our food scientist in the back knows. It is false. That's actually not real. You can put hot food straight in the refrigerator. Crazy, I know. This is from our book, so it's not me. And putting chicken in a colander and rinsing it with water will remove bacteria like salmonella. True? Anyone? Be honest. False. Okay, you all are correct. It is false. Lemon juice and salt will clean and sanitize a cutting board. Very acidic, salt cuts through a lot of stuff. What do you think? True? False. Okay, it is false. It will not clean it. Good job. Thought I would dupe you guys, but you're smarter than that. So what makes people get sick? Can anyone name some of the bacteria that you would find on food, in refrigerators? Anything you can think of? You can just shout it out.
Salmonella.
Yeah.
Very good.
E. coli.
E. coli.
E. coli, awesome. Anything else?
Hysteria.
Very good.
Molds.
Yes. Okay, well I listed a few here. So first we have Staph aureus. So this is a very important bacteria, and I saw it multiple times when creating this PowerPoint. So how do you think is the #1 way this is transferred from human to human? Skin, correct. Now, even deeper than that is your nose. So this is huge, I know, and look at this photo. Isn't that great? So the biggest way that we have issues with our food demonstrations is you're doing a food demo, you're handing someone something, and then you just go like this, hand it to them. Bam, you've just infected them. That easy. Noses are the biggest way that we transfer Staph aureus. So it's very important to make sure that when you have those gloves on, when you're giving people food, you're not touching anything on your body. The next would of course be like your hair, you know, just kind of like wishing that out of your face. Bam, Staph aureus, you just give it to someone. So that is something to think about. So of course, now the statistics is it's in the nose of 30 to 50% of people. That's huge. So it's not like we would have huge symptoms. You know, maybe I have a bad immune system and Nat gives it to me and now suddenly, but she was able to handle it. I could not. That's what could happen. And about 20 to 30 of adults carry it on their skin. So running nose, rubbing your nose, scratching your scalp, rubbing your ear, pretty much anything on the skin, clothes, you can transfer it. Next one is what are the symptoms of Staph aureus? So they can cause minor issues. This would be like staph infections, abscesses, cellulitis. So these are pretty minor, they can be fixed. But of course we can have larger ailments than that. So this would be like bloodstream infections, pneumonia, right? Bone and joint infections. And there's many more. And these would be things that would require long-term hospitalization and maybe even people that wouldn't be able to recover as well, right? The populations that are at high risk. Salmonella, as we mentioned before. So this is the most common food infection of all of them. And of course, it was the first one we mentioned. So everyone has heard of salmonella. Everyone knows about salmonella. And this is found in meat, fish, and poultry. Those are the top 3 places that it's found. Now, we all know when you cook food, the salmonella is killed. So that's the best way to get rid of it. But the #1 way of getting salmonella is cross-contamination. What does that mean? Anyone? Except Julie. Yes.
It's like mixed if you like take your like you just cut up chicken, raw chicken, and you put it with like vegetables. With the same gloves or hair, you wash your hands.
Exactly, that's correct. So it's normally with cutting boards, same concept. So if you cut chicken, cut salmon on a cutting board, then you wash it. You're like, oh, this is clean, you know, I washed it. Cut some watermelon on it. If you don't clean cutting boards properly once using meat, fish, or poultry, that's the most common way that people get infected with salmonella, which is you think you cleaned it, and you're like, okay, soap water, it's clean, but it's still there. It can hide in the crevices, especially cutting boards. When you have the wood ones, they get cracked in those little crevices. A lot of things like to hide in there. So safest thing is if you see a cutting board that's cracked, just toss it. Put it away. And symptoms take a lot longer to show up than other bacteria. So these could be, they're kind of similar, all the symptoms for the foodborne illnesses, we all know the upset stomach, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, pretty much GI problems, which would be gastroenteritis. So nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, stomach cramps. Now we have norovirus. So norovirus is when you go to the restroom, don't wash your hands. Now, we all pretty much wash our hands, I would say it's safe to say, but what about, I'm in the restroom, pull up my pants, wash my hands. Suddenly, I'm at the food demo, I'm like, oh, let me fix my belt. What did I just do? Recontaminated myself. So this is very important. Like I said, you don't want to touch your nose, you don't want to touch anything. You don't want to touch your clothes. That's also very dangerous. Touching your pants, touching your shirt, you're still recontaminating yourself. So are we ever really clean from the bathroom? Probably not, unless you change your clothes after, or just go in there with no clothes, which some people do. And this is highly contagious. So of course, as a virus, viruses are non-treatable. You have to get over them, right? Just like the cold, the flu, they're very you can take, things to help the fever, but a virus, you just gotta get rid of. You gotta let your body go through it. So these are the same symptoms with most of the bacteria, as I mentioned earlier: vomiting, diarrhea, upset stomach, GI problems, same concept. So next we would think, the fridge is a pretty safe place to put your food, right? I pretty much put everything in the fridge, like my chips, my chia seeds, my carrots, just about anything. I put it in the fridge. But is that safe? Anyone? I feel like Sammy knows, because he mentioned it, but anyone? It is not safe. You were right. If anyone is surprised. No, listeria. This hides in the fridge. So I'm sure we know from microbiology, we have different types of bacteria, right? So the thermophiles, they do well in heat. And then we have ones that do well in colder temperatures. Listeria is one of them. So the refrigerator is where it grows the best in. So this is why we have to be careful putting things in the refrigerator. Now, what the guideline is for putting food in the refrigerator for a food demo purpose is it has to be in there 24 hours if you don't want to mark it. So if you leave it in the fridge and you know it's going to be in there for just a day, you can leave it in. But if it's going to be in there for longer, you have to put the time, the date, what's in there, when you need to throw it out. And you have 7 days to use it, and then it has to be thrown out. Has to be thrown out. And of course, the temperature has to be kept below 41 degrees Fahrenheit. So just to make sure that the temperatures are in there, and we also have thermometers in the temperature. For food demo purposes, we got to make sure that we have that thermometer in there, just to make sure that the reading on the fridge itself is correct. So do all foods need to be refrigerated? Not necessarily. The main foods that we want to make sure are super heavily monitored are the PHF foods, potentially hazardous foods. So, these are pretty much, they called it like protein-containing foods. So it'd be your meats, your dairies, garlic and oil. I thought was kind of random, but that's on the list. Sprouts, of course, cut, we know that. Shellfish, cut fruit, anything that's pretty much cut, gotta go in there. Proteins gotta go in there. Meat, fish, poultry, we know about that. Cooked veggies have to go in there. So what can you do to prevent all of this from happening? Proper hand washing. This is very important. I know growing up it was always like count happy birthday twice, which kind of can last a while depending on what version you're singing. So now, based off of the book, it's 10 to 15 seconds, which seems a little bit shorter, but we have to make sure we're getting under those fingernails. Nail beds, fingernails, I don't know if everyone had it, but in my microbiology class, we did the whole black light thing after you got done washing your hands, and it was like just nastiness everywhere. It was pretty gross. So we have to make sure we're getting under the fingernails, in the nail beds, all of that, just really scrubbing for those 10 to 15 seconds. And then we have to use running warm water to rinse, and 100 degrees water. I know that sounds really hot. That's what is required. The water has to be 100 degrees to kill the germs. And then we have to use a paper towel or a hand dryer. Cannot use a cloth towel, because then the germs are just going to be transferred to another person. So have to use either of those two, hand dryer, paper towels. Gloves, these are very important. This is also another, as you were mentioning, if you're cutting, chicken with one glove, can't use it to cut the vegetables, right? Especially if you're not going to be putting them in the same container to make. So we have to make sure that gloves are single use. We can't be using them again and again. And if you need to grab your phone and your hands are, say, clean because you're just giving out orange marmalade, take off the gloves, get your phone, do whatever you need to, put on a new pair of gloves. Don't put on the same pair, or don't use your phone with the gloves and then keep doing what you're doing. It has to be a new pair of gloves. So who knows how to take off gloves correctly? Yes?
So, the other one talking about.
Yes, exactly. That way you're not touching. I was going to have gloves up here, but yes, correct. So you want to make sure that you're not touching the other hand that's gloved and getting all up in your skin. You want to make sure that we're taking them off the correct way. I think most of us know. Does anyone not know how to do it the correct way? No? Okay, good. And so of course getting new gloves when they're dirty, beginning a new task just to be safe. Even if we're still doing vegetables, better to be safe than sorry. If you're going into a drawer, grabbing new utensils, you want to make sure that you just change the gloves. We don't want to get anyone sick. And after an interruption, like we said, the phone or maybe grabbing something out of your backpack, and then of course handling raw foods. So tips to think of during the food demos. We want to make sure that we're always wearing the gloves. As we said, we cannot harp enough about gloves. So hopefully that's what you take away from this is gloves. Just that one word. So do not touch your hair, face, clothes, anything while you're preparing the food. As we mentioned earlier, this could easily transfer any sort of bacteria, the norovirus, Staph aureus, anything. You just transfer it. And bring plenty of gloves. You definitely don't want to run out of any gloves. So when to just say no. I know that in our internships and in trying to add as much as we can to our resume, being super active or interactive with the MMC and our respective clubs, we want to just say yes to everything. We want to help out and get those hours, but sometimes we just have to say no. If you got the sniffles, you just got to say no. Don't even risk yourself or anyone else, because at the end of the day, we don't want to get anyone else sick, So sore throat with fever, that's definitely a no-no. Then fever in general. So fevers normally would mean something that your body's trying to get rid of, and it needs to be dealt with on its own. Normally a virus is what a fever will indicate. Vomiting, diarrhea, and then just any illness. You just want to stay at home, or just say, no, I can't, not today. Even if it's last minute, we will find someone to replace. It is not a big deal. So next is, what about the food? What we haven't talked about the food much, just more about ourselves. So we are not all to blame. Sometimes the food is to blame. Temperature danger zone. This is huge. I think we've all seen this or heard about it once or twice before. So the range is going to be 41 to 135. So if we want foods that are frozen, keep them below 41. Foods that are hot, above 135. And so that's the danger zone, of course, right in the middle. That's when bacteria will be able to multiply. And that's when you want to heat or cool food quickly. You don't want to make it take too long. Thermometers, as we talked about earlier, thermometers. Now these are very important. I'm sure I have one at home, and I try to calibrate it as often as I can. But has anyone calibrated their own thermometer at their house? No, right? Probably not. One? Okay, that's good. So one person. So we need to make sure that we calibrate even our own thermometers at home, and we're also telling patients that they should calibrate their thermometers. If maybe they've never made a certain food, or they're making it for the first time, say like a whole chicken or like a big roast, they should be using a thermometer. And if it's not calibrated, they could be reading the wrong temperature. It could get them sick at the end of the day. And of course, for food demos, got to make sure that if we're making something like that our thermometers are calibrated. So with the calibracy, we want to make sure that we calibrate by using an ice bath or a boil. You can do it either way. Both ways are equally effective. And so you want the water to be at 32 degrees, and then you're going to check it, of course. Make sure, 32 degrees. Then if you're boiling, you want it to be at 212, 400 degrees Celsius. And we have to make sure these measurements is in that 2 inches, all the way in. And once it's done being calibrated, you can reuse it, but if the calibration was not successful, it has to be thrown out, just to make sure. So why calibrate? So you know that thermometers are accurate, as mentioned before. We want to make sure that we're checking the food at the right temperatures, and if we think it's right and it's not, that's going to cause a lot. And adjust the thermometer or dispose, like we said. We'll dispose of it if need to. So safe cooking temperatures. There was a lot on the list, so I didn't want to overload with so many temperatures, but these are the ones that I thought were kind of important. So poultry, 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which is kind of a lot. I didn't realize it was that high. And ground meat, 155. And these are very specific temperatures. So if we're not reaching these, which I would probably say that most of us at home don't get to these high temperatures, just by gauging, is the hamburger brown on the inside. And fish, eggs, shellfish, hot dogs, these are things I feel like we kind of eat on a more regular basis, or maybe would serve on a more regular basis. So we just have to make sure that they're reaching these temperatures. And now this is the safe hot handling. So if we have hot food, what is the safe temperature to hold it at? So we want to be above the danger zone. The danger zone is definitely the lowest number we want to have it at. We want to be above that. Don't want to linger right there. So we want to be above 135. And once you've reached 4 hours, it needs to be thrown out. So if we're doing a food demo, if we're out there, maybe we're doing chili or something, and it's been 4 hours, it's got to go. Unfortunately, it's got to go. And next we have the safe cold handling. So maybe if we have something like ice cream or whatever else we can have that's cold, it has to be well below the danger zone. So from 40 to 33 is what the suggested temperature is. And this didn't have a throw out after, because of course we know we store ice cream or cold things for quite longer than we can store warm things. And safe reheating. So we want to reheat within 2 hours. And reheat on stove or in oven, we want to check it with the thermometer. So we don't want to do reheating in the microwave, which I don't think most of us do as far as for food demonstration purposes. We want to make sure that we're taking the proper precautions so that it's done in an oven or on a stovetop and not in the microwave. So food safety is in your hands. Does anyone have any quick questions? Awesome. So now I want to test you on how much you have learned. We're going to play Kahoot. So if everyone can get their phones out and pair up with maybe like 2 to 3 people. Okay, everyone, yes.
How do you use Kahoot?
Okay, so you're going to go online and type in kahoot.it. So it's K-A-H-O-O-T and then .it. Kahoot.it, if you will. And we have prizes for the winning teams. Pretty exciting.
I'm excited.
You should be.
Team
And so you'll just type in that pin. So going to kahoot.it will be the best way to do it. And it'll just say the pin and you'll type it in.
Whatever. Winners.
Yeah.
Winners, yeah. Is it only one per one group?
What do you mean?
Is it one per group?
Yes. Yeah, you only need one phone.
Yeah.
Marie? Like, Marie?
Is everyone logged in? Not yet? Okay, take your time. Pia, you guys good? Okay, everyone's logged in? All right. Let's start. How much did you learn?
everyone ready yet?
I'll give you 20 seconds. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, 76 million, and I put a lot of lower ones in there just so you would see how much people it really is. It is a huge number, 76 million. I mean, that is a large amount of the population. And I'm sure just like me, I probably get sick, I would say like once a year from something I ate. I don't know what I ate, but probably once a year. So I'm sure most of us get sick, and maybe if it's even unreported, just a little upset stomach, or like, oh, I don't feel like eating, I just don't feel good, right? That happens pretty much on like a yearly basis, would you say? Pretty much, yeah. Okay, next question. Oh, well, whoever that is, you're first.
That's us.
Oh, that's why it took you so long. I like it. So you only take one. Which one? All right. Good job. So we all remember who the populations at risk were. I thought this one was going to be a little bit easy, so I'm glad everyone got it. All right, still ahead. Good job. So like what area on the body are we most concerned about staph aureus? All right. And all of those were correct, but just the most concerned was the nose. You can still transfer it on your clothes, you can transfer it on utensils, but most concerned about was your nose. So what was the major ailment? I mentioned minor ailments and major ones. Which one was major? This one's a little bit harder, so take your time. Still have 15 seconds. Don't jump the gun. So it was pneumonia. Some of these I threw in there to like throw everyone off. So staph infection was considered a minor ailment because staph infections are pretty treatable. But pneumonia is a little bit harder to get over, so that's why it was part of the major ailments. But that is correct. Staph infection is one of the ailments, so good job. Uh-oh, someone's gunning. Most common food infection. So what bacteria causes the most food infection? All right, one person for norovirus. So of course all of them are important, but salmonella, like we said, it's so easy to transfer it, especially with the cutting board. That was the most common way to transfer, is thinking you clean the cutting board well enough, and it's just not clean enough. Like I said, the grooves of the cutting board, I remember we had one that was like just splitting, but it was my favorite cutting board. Finally had to throw it out after I took FCS 201. I was like, all right, time to get rid of it, all these terrible bacteria. So we just have to make sure that when they have those cracks and grooves, and when we're cleaning it from the meat, fish, or poultry, we clean really well, especially when preparing food for other people. Okay, still number one. So what's the most common way to become infected? Oh, I mentioned this, so I hope you get it right. I accidentally just said it. Okay, good job. Who said not washing hands?
We were in the sixth place.
No one's gonna admit it? Okay, it's fine. So not washing hands was part of norovirus. That was the most common for norovirus. But for salmonella, it was cross-contamination. Okay. Still on top. Good job, ladies. So what's the most common way norovirus is transferred? So any of these works, but what's the most common? Right? This is one of those terrible questions where like everything's the right answer, but what's the best answer? Those are awful, I know. I see you giving me the evil eyes. Okay, good job, everyone got it right. All right, coming in hot. So what bacteria grows well in the refrigerator? Which one was it? Don't say it, Cindy. I threw in some randoms in there. All right. Okay, so the green one I actually made up. I'm not sure why everyone chose that one. Well, I'm glad you think that was real. That was pretty good. So it was the listeria, the monocytogenes. I think I'm saying that wrong. That is the one that grows the best in the refrigerator. But I'm glad you know it wasn't the other two. Oh, Taj is ahead. PHF, what does it stand for? I made this one a little bit hard. They all sound the same, they all look the same. Which one is it? Which one was it? I know. Potentially hazardous foods. I feel like they all could work, but it was potentially hazardous foods. How hot should the water be when you wash your hands? I made them pretty close, so hopefully it's a little bit tough. 6 answers, waiting on one more.
It's not allowing the phone's freezing.
Likely story, ladies.
No, we never.
Oh, yay! Awesome job for paying attention. What is the temperature danger zone? So remember that limit where you don't want to get cold food past and hot food above. Where was that danger limit where most bacteria grows? One more answer. All right, everyone got it right. Taj still ahead. So safe cooking temperature for fish. You had to be really paying attention for this one. And I did not make it easy for everyone. You should be scared. Two more groups. What do you think? Ooh, pretty split. 2 groups got it. Good job. Taj still ahead. I feel like you guys are cheating back there. 2 computers open. I don't know. So I kind of briefly mentioned this, but when you put the thermometer in the food, where should it go in the product, in the food product? So in the chicken or in the piece of meat, where should it go? All right, almost. And I think, oh, that was the last one. Yay, good job. So we have some goodies over here if our top 3 teams would like to come collect their prizes. Yay, good job. I'm glad you all were listening. You can come collect them. Speech. The first, we're third. Yeah, we're third place. We're like the first one.
You guys could go. Yeah, this is your first one.
You don't want anything? Okay, well then everyone else gets to choose. These are salad shakers. Healthy prizes. Healthy. I know. Second is still good, not so bad. Thank you. Sure. All right, everyone, that concludes our presentation. Thank you for coming. I hope you learned a lot about food